Welcome back to the Arcopia Show. I believe that this is episode number 10 already. Today I wanted to discuss what happens when Western countries fail. So, um, like Western countries, Australia, New Zealand, United States, I guess Mexico, and Canada. We haven't really failed or felt the pain that other countries have felt in recent history, although I think we're going to feel it worse, the absolute worst, and I can explain why. But also, which Western country is going to fail first? So we have the United States as the world reserve currency. I think that the U.S. is going to fall the hardest, but it's going to be the absolute last one to fall. Um, Canada, Australia, New Zealand type of thing. Um, Europe as well. Uh, I guess we're kind of all on the same wokeism, communism, no production, only consumption, you know, the whole, we're all kind of the same. The governments are kind of the same, but I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about Canada and why it's probably the worst of them and probably why it's going to fail first. So, one thing about Canada, it's a newer country and it's very far north. So, being a newer country and being very far north, that means Mother Nature is a problem. You can't do things outside for most of the year, whereas, let's say, Philippines, Thailand, China, India, they have heat problems, uh, of course, but you can do things outside. If you want to grow food, almost, any time of year, you can throw seeds on the ground outside and, it's as simple as growing them. Maybe you need shade cloth or something and lots of water. I mean, everywhere has its problems, but Canada is minus 50 Celsius. Freeze your face off in 20 seconds for extended periods of time. We can only grow food outside for 3 safe months. The rest of the time, we can do meat and eggs and kind of. I always think of the old pioneer when the first pioneers like my ancestors. So I'm, you know, on average fourth generation Canadian. So I don't really have, you know, I'm kind of a mutt as well, kind of different parts of Europe. Four different things actually. My wife's yeah, purebred something rather, and in the Europe area, but there's not much of a heritage. So my heritage is I'm kind of Canadian. This is my home. I don't have a home to really run to or that I would call home. Canada is my home. Whereas newer immigrants to Canada, so we're all immigrants, doesn't matter where you live, right? Like literally everyone is an immigrant to somewhere and everyone is native to the land somewhere. Like it's all just we're just all humans, but more recent immigrants, let's say it's from the Philippines or China or India, or specifically where I am, it's a lot of Philippines, Chinese, and East Indians type of thing. They move to Canada, and they'll, with VPNs and stuff, they can watch their home uh, news and things. They don't even follow Canadian news. Their little groups, like they'll, like if you're from a particular culture, like let's say you're, like me, just speak English, and then you go to a country that doesn't speak English, I would probably start by like in-group tribal preference type of thing. Like my kind of people that I'm kind of used to and I can speak English with, which isn't the native tongue at wherever I went. But anyway, so people come here. Some of them have a romanticized view of the West, So whether that's Hollywood movies and things, and the freedoms, like the United States for the first 150 or whatever years was like the most prosperous, freest country after they you know got away from Britain, type of thing, and in 1776. And then they had a little bit of problems, but they had real money. There was real progress, like real hard men pioneers, like all kinds of freedom, no government tyranny, and they were able to build things up to a point, and then we degraded, arguably, you could last 100 years or so going downhill, type of thing. Like there's some innovations in technology and blah 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 and the iPhone, but for the most part, it's been a downgrade with amenities, I guess. But what I'm getting at is, immigrants will have a romanticized view, so they'll come here, or they'll come here to make bank and send money back home with the intention of going back home. So when Canada fails, and it will, the path that we're on, um, why would a newer immigrant that has a homeland and family back home, like maybe they're a first generation or even second generation Canadian, why would they stay here in a frozen, windy hellscape land where you can't be outside for months at a time, and it's very harsh conditions and everything is very difficult to do? So I would say if Canada gets to a point where, in any regards, whether it's hyperinflation or even more tyranny, and or whatever, it's not worth the squeeze. Why would they stay here? So if something goes bad in Canada, I have a feeling people are going to move back to their homeland. People who are lucky enough to have a different homeland and citizenship and things. But already when some immigrants come, I think that's their intention as well. Like they can come from wherever, the Philippines or something, work at Tim Hortons or some like simple job, and make a huge amount of money in relation to where they come from, and then send some back home for their families to live, and they have the intention probably to go back home. Some of them still, with their romanticized view, still have the thought that they're going to bring the rest of their family over to Canada. Like once one comes, they can bring the rest, type of thing. But when they get to Canada, and I love talking to new immigrants of all different kinds, it doesn't matter if it's Iranian, Greece, Indian, um, Chinese, Philippines. It's really interesting to talk to them because they come to Canada. They don't realize, like, it's not in their heritage or mindset of how bad things are in the winter, how bad Mother Nature can be when you live in a more tropical location where you can survive outside, you can live in a tent, you can live in a hut, you can live in a simpler house. Um, it's easier to build a house because you don't need like footings below the frost, or they don't need a lot of utilities. A nice shady tree in the heat of the summer or something. They don't they don't realize that Canada eats most. Our food is mostly processed, imported food, um, whereas in other countries there's fresh food all the time. So, for example, for goats, I talk to new immigrants, whether it's like Iranian, Iraqi, like in Indian, they eat goat meat and fresh meat. That's their diet. They eat fresh vegetables and fresh fruits, like in their country, because they can. They come to Canada, and everything's just like dead old meat and partially rotten fruits and vegetables that were grown in California at the closest, or Chile or China or India or something, and all heavy preservatives, heavy packaged things. Like I've seen immigrants, they come here, and in all these other countries, they're mostly physically fit and kind of a decent body weight. They come to Canada and they get bigger, they get fat, and I've seen some with acne problems that I'm sure they didn't have in their country. It's when they come here and where they're used to eating fresh, healthy, like home cooked food, and then they come here and everything's dead, processed, preservatives, artificial colors, and and it shortens our lifespan. I'm actually surprised Canada's lifespan isn't lower. Like I don't know if I think we're the most obese country in the world or something, or we have the most diabetes in the world or something. But anyways, like it's harsh living here. So government stupidity and tyranny aside, Mother Nature is bad, and the majority of Canada's population lives in like Ontario, Quebec, and in large city centers. These city centers, of course, are built for as long as all the services and all the amenities and trucks are hauling in all the resources like food and energy and things, then it's fine. But if Canada goes down in some way, those cities, just because of Mother Nature, they're dead. Those cities are dead. They're completely useless. Um, there's no land to grow food. There's no like, it's like you can barely see the sky in Toronto, and that's a dead city. It's a system built for all these amenities. So whether it's hyperinflation, peak oil, um, or like God forbid, bad disaster or bad event type of thing, but those cities are completely dead. So I picture Canada if any of these fragile systems were to break down, it goes back to the original hardened pioneer days, the first pioneers that came to Canada to work the land and farm, and wood stove, no electricity, really, really harsh, like really harsh conditions. Um, and those cities dead, and I think a lot of people go back to their home country. So I'm trying to think, like, what is this, like, what are the economics of this too? If Canada goes south, like there's going to be a lot of vacant houses in cities, like completely worthless, absolute worthless houses in cities, um, and with what is it called, de-immigration? Like people immigrated here is like thinking Canada's this special place. They go into debt, buy a BMW, buy a way overpriced house that they can't afford, and get the credit cards and the fancy stuff, and and realize that this life, I had it better at home in my simple house. I ate better. I was close to family. There's no old folks home. There was nowhere near the tyranny, nowhere near the regulations and fees and laws, and you can't do anything in Canada. Like, oh, you want to do that, do you? Well, yeah, get your checkbook out and buy this annual fee or license or something. Um, and it's funny because Canada's such a big country with all sorts of natural resources and a low population, and in like the harsh north, and we're going full retard. And I think we're going to go full retard over other Western countries. So the first Western country to fail is probably going to be Canada at this rate. So, yeah, we got that to look forward to. So I often think, like, why did I stay in this country? Honestly. And it comes down to there's no new land, new continent to run to, and everywhere has its own set of problems. So I just figured, Well, here I got space, relatively inexpensive land, I guess. Like everything's relatively clean and things, and I have the resources like insulation and stuff and some technologies. And you know, if it was going back to pioneer times, um, and you have some of this technology and above ground resources and things, like you can set up and it's not as bad as a pioneer would have had it, but um, it's going to be bad. Like if things go bad in Canada or the world, it's going to be bad in Canada. So a lot of freezing to death, whereas other countries like Canada, a lot of freezing to death, a lot of starving. Whereas in many countries, you know, that live more primitively, I guess, because the climate essentially allows them. So where it's nicer on the planet, there's always a higher population because it's easier living, and also I would say the lifespan is longer in places that can grow fresh food, local food year round, not have the to worry about deferred gratification and freezing to death in the winter. Like if you're a normal, if you have the northern mentality, that means you have deferred gratification. That means if you're not responsible and you're not a prepper, then you're going to die, right? So when a new immigrant comes over, somebody from closer to the equator or a nice place like place, there's people that live in my city. They do not have winter boots, winter coat. They go from one underground parking to another, hang out in the shopping malls, in flip flops in the middle of winter. They're walking around the malls and things, and I'm just, oh man, this whole thing is so fragile. It's just running on these inputs, and the whole thing's built on these new technologies and new inputs, right? So, like electricity, natural gas, propane, diesel, gasoline. And if any one of those stops, it's over. It's so fragile. It's like humans, they just built these houses of cards type of thing. And it freaks me out. So, for some reason, I don't know if it's my Northern European heritage. Somehow something came through my traits that I'm stuck with this deferred gratification thing and preparing for winter. But most people, even with my heritage, they don't have that. And they submitted to, what are you worried about? The gas will never go off and stuff. But um, I have a feeling there's not going to be enough planes and boats and things to get the newer immigrants. They'll go back home because they'll realize that their quality of life was better at home. Like living in a more primitive house, but they have family, they have fresh food, they have no worries, they don't have a million different forms to do every year, every month, like all the time. They don't have all these stupid restrictions. Like it's pretty dumb in Canada. Like um, and all these Western countries, and it's getting dumber. Like I forget which Roman. This in ancient times, it was the more stupid laws that a society has is the closer it is to collapse. And Canada is full blown, full retard. So. So places like Australia, they might have fire problems or extreme heat problems, but they don't have the deadly cold problems. Same with New Zealand. In New Zealand, at our Costco in Canada up here, you can buy a whole frozen goat in the freezer at Costco that's from New Zealand for significantly cheaper than any sort of fresh goat in Canada. And that's because in New Zealand, they can essentially just pasture goats year round, outside, easy living type of thing. In Canada, no, you don't have like a really good shelter and don't have hay for them for 7 months of the year. You got dead goats. Like goats are really hard to raise in Canada. So cattle, they can withstand the cold better in a bigger livestock like that. But with Canada going full retard, they want to take away like like the cow farts and things. Like essentially the environmental virtue signalers that are at the helm, and the voters are, they're against the environment. Like what are goats grazing in a pasture? Oh, that's nature. So environmentalists are against nature. They want to get rid of the goats and do the, you know, 100,000 square foot bug factory in Ontario. That's a good idea. Yeah, let's not do the nature thing where the goats like poop on the ground and fertilize it and keep the grass cut and like live a healthy life. Let's do the bugs in the factory, because that's good for nature, right? And Canada's going the way of the Netherlands with their nitrogen fertilizer uh, kind of reduction thing for farmers. So essentially, traditional agriculture, like when you first clear forested land and or natural grassland, first till it up. Wow, this soil's amazing. And then continued cultivation and things, you lose all that topsoil. So for a lot of the traditional, I guess you'd call traditionally agriculture land or cultivated land, it doesn't have any nutrients anymore. So the world population grew. I think we're at 8 billion ish or something. Grew exponentially. It's like a J curve. If you have a look, it's like all of recorded human history. It's kind of flatlined and going up so slightly, and then it's just all of a sudden rockets exponentially straight up. And traditional agriculture and the invention of pesticides and antibiotics and things, and some of those technologies is why the population grew so much. But that cultivating land, how we've lost so much topsoil that now you need quite a bit of inputs. So essentially, when you put a seed in the ground, it's not in topsoil. It won't really do anything unless you put the synthetic or other inputs into it. So it's essentially a medium for setting the seed and to hold synthetic inputs type of thing. And this is how we feed the world now, like the amount of population that we have. So by them reducing nitrogen fertilizer by 30%, I believe it is, um, they say it's going to, like, I can see their perspective. They like it's going to push more to organic farming and organic practices. So that means like probably a lot more diesel fuel is used for organic farming on a large scale for spreading manure or something. But oh wait, you got to get rid of the cow farts too, so we're not going to have manure even. So I don't know how that works. Um, but essentially, without the massive machines, massive plots of cleared land, massive inputs like nitrogen fertilizer, then you don't get the amount of food off that you used to. So then there's not enough food or less food to feed the rest of the population, right? So I think there's a joke about organic farming. It's, taking land that used to feed thousands to feed dozens when you go to organic. But anyway, so I actually do think this cultivating land, like big scale corporate mass scale farming, is not sustainable, right? So it's my land. I'm kind of trying to do it so it's like every year things get better. It's I don't have too many goats on the pasture, but I don't have too few. It just kind of works. And then when I have like manure from the goats and stuff, and that feeds the garden, and then you know the it just kind of like permaculture closed system that I'm trying to do. But but yeah, Canada's going full blown retard. There's no other way to put it. And if you don't like that word retard, I'm sorry. Look up the definition and tell me that's not Canada. It's not making fun of disabled people. Well, I mean, it kind of is, but not like physically, like what you're thinking. No, full retard, like that Tropic Thunder. Never go full retard. But it's like with the energy too. Like, let's tax the living crap out of all of our, I guess, energy that we use today. So fossil fuels, electricity. Well, carbon tax is a tax on everything. So before we have a viable alternative in place, let's tax the shit out of it. So the few smart people out there that are innovating and doing things, let's make it significantly more expensive and difficult to innovate. Actually, when you have a super high taxed uh, country, that leads to much less innovation, right? But anyways, let's just cut off the pipelines and cut off everything before we have viable alternatives. So like, but our like, there's no other way to put it. So they're doing this on. They're either, again, are you evil or are you stupid or are you a little of a little of B? It's, I think it's that, like they don't, they shouldn't be somebody like that. You need a adult in power. You need an adult at the helm, not a moron. Like, there's virtue signaling is great, and yeah, if you're against oil, like, let's stop all oil right now. And then they literally kill everyone. Like, maybe that's what they want to do, or maybe they're too stupid to realize that that's what they're gonna do. I mean, in a sick and twisted way, the powers that be force me back to the land to do like permaculture, organic farming, super high efficient building, passive solar greenhouse, right? So maybe in some sick twisted way we should pat the powers that be on the back, say good job, but we're like, see, we helped because Dean is doing that. It's for, like, they made the taxes and things so high that it's going to reduce, well, it has reduced my travel. It's changed uh, a bunch of things and decisions that I've done. So maybe pat JT on the back there and good job, buddy. So, oh, so I don't know, but Canada has no gold at all. We sold our gold a long time ago, the last of it. So Canada does have gold in the ground, but like, for example, I like following all the mining stocks, and it's just something, a sector that I really like. But for Canada, if you want to do a new mine, like a gold mine or any mine, like, there's things like, it's a extensively, ridiculously long bureaucratic paperwork, expensive fee process. Like, in Canada, you need to do gender studies on the gender impacts when doing a new, like, resource mine and things like that. So so I always joke, like, do you have any gold mining, like, stocks that you're interested in Canada? I say, I don't invest in conflict countries, so I prefer a company or a few companies in Colombia, actually, because they're not conflict countries. Oh, but Canada has no gold in the vaults. That's very bad. For like, the power shifted to where the majority of production and resources and the population is to the east, like Russia, um, China, the BRICS nations, it's called. and going away from the West for obvious good reasons. Like if I was an Easterner looking at the West, like I'd be wanting to, you know, get out of the SWIFT banking system and have our own currency so we're not being bullied by the US dollar and things. Like the only thing Canada has going for it is that it's kind of we don't really have an identity. It's just a mixed bag up here, and that we share a large border with the United States, so we're like this little cousin, off of the United States. So, but even still, I think Canada is going to be the first Western country to fall over Australia's stupidity, over New Zealand's stupidity. Um, Yeah, so that sucks for us up in Canada, but hey, what do you do? Enjoy the decline. Hopefully, I'm set up enough that it's less painful for me. But um, yeah, so I'm trying to picture like way into the future what Canada's going to look like, and it kind of is like it's just going to be like this resource hub that does nothing. It kind of already is. That like digs up raw resources and sends it to other places for them to better their lives, and will live in you know there'll be a lower population than even now, is what I'm thinking. So Canada is one of these countries where 1 million people kind of pull the weight and carry the rest of the population, 40 million or whatever we are now. Not very big, not a very big country, right? Um, but yeah, 1 million people pull the entire rest of the country. So, the elites, they'll talk about the useless eaters. So I try to look at their perspective. And yeah, when they say they want to reduce the world population from 8 billion to 500 million, I can kind of see that playing out through what's happening. And things like they just want the people that produce things left, like essentially for them. Yeah, what do you need the other 95% of the population for? So, uh, yeah, I'm trying to see their perspective. I'm trying to, like, when you try to be enlightened, you try to, like, okay, let's see just what the couple little electrical signals that go through Justin Trudeau's brain. Let's see what the leftist thinks. Let's see what the right wing guy thinks. Let's see what the anti immigration person likes. Let's see what all these other cultures are thinking when they come here. Um, let's. It's good to be enlightened and get everybody's perspective so you can get kind of a whole story. But um, if this all is some elaborate evil plan in the making by someone, um, or it's just kind of the silliness and stupidity of human nature, like it's a little of both probably. But yeah, Canada's not looking particularly good now, guys. But what do you do? Where do you run to? So you just got to pick your spot, and you got to hunker inwards, and there's nothing else you can do. So, but yeah, like for an immigrant to come here, and if they have this romanticized view, they're probably like it might be good, because if they come over and then they realize there's so much welfare and this quality of life that's kind of temporary fake, like they might think it's a wonderful in Canada. But a lot of immigrants are business owners, because a Canadian, uh, like multi generations been in Canada, they're not the ones starting businesses. It's all immigrants come over. They're business people. They run everything. They own everything. They start the businesses. I just love it. Like if somebody asked, like, what would happen if China invaded Canada, I'd be like, oh man, like, what would we do with all these new businesses and production and better goods at a cheaper price? Like, oh, that would be terrible. Just terrible if that happened. Yeah. But yeah, I've literally talked to some business owners from China that come to Canada, and after struggling and struggling and trying, it's like they literally regret leaving their home country, right? Um, but like I said, there's problems everywhere. There's problems in China too, like lots of problems in China. So where do you go, right? Where do you go to hide from the stupidity, from the collapse? You just got to pick your spot. That's why self-reliance. Like, what do you think's going to happen, Dean? I don't know. That's why I go out and water apple trees. Like, I have no idea. Okay, and neither does anybody else you hear. But I try to get all these different perspectives, and Canada looks bad. So the United States, when they finally lose the world reserve currency completely, it's going to be the worst for the United States because they have the most debt by far. They're going to probably hyperinflate. Their quality of life is going to go down. I would say, like the power shifts to the east, like Russia, China, India type of thing. I would say that, and they also hold a lot of dollars. So if they start sending those dollars back to the U.S. when they're it's losing ground, U.S. losing their status as the reserve. Like, why would they want to hold these U.S. dollars? I think they're going to buy everything that's not nailed down. I think used cars in USA, maybe even Canada, used cars, for instance, we might be uh, shipping them by train and then by boat for like people that produce things, because uh, that's one thing that we can sell. Or all these campers and quads and anything that's literally anything that's not nailed down. I can see the other countries buying them back and leaving us with, or leaving the U.S. with nothing, and the U.S. just goes into a wasteland, like it already is in the big cities. You look at the just Google homeless tent cities and things, and it's already quite bad, um, and it's going to get quite a bit worse. But U.S. is going to be the last to fall. So when you see the first Western country fall, and I think it'll be Canada, you can expect to see the other Western countries fall before the U.S., and then the U.S. at the end of it, and then the U.S. is going to be in the absolute worst off type of thing. That's how I see it, actually. So, and that's kind of best case scenario almost at this point. So yeah, I often thought maybe shoot, I should move to the Philippines or something, and it's I or Africa would be is up and coming, right? So if somebody like me that has like drive and could start a business or build a factory and do something there without regulations and fees and stuff, maybe you have to deal with rebels or thefts, or hire your own security or something. Um, but I would actually take that over over stuff going in Canada right now. So, but yeah, fun stuff. So yeah, just to summarize, Canada's going to fail because it's the wokest, the most leftist, the most welfare, no gold, harsh climate, northern climate, Mother Nature, uh, mixed bag, and newer first and second generation immigrants going home. And yeah, that's in a nutshell my pessimistic view on Canada being the first Western country to go. So, like, some are going to go in Europe. I don't know. I'm not going to include that, but Europe's going to going to go here, probably before Canada. Um, but yeah, for what I consider the West, USA, Canada, I guess Mexico, and Australia, New Zealand type of thing. Canada is going to be the first big Western one to go. And if you have other perspectives, like, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If you live in Australia, or you're listening from New Zealand, or the United States, or Mexico, or parts of Europe, like, let me know what you think about what I just said there. It could have been so great, you know. It could have been so incredibly great. I bet you we could have had some alternative forms of energy, hydrogen powered something, cars. When we started exporting all production to uh, the Asia countries type of thing, a lot of innovation would come out of the States and Canada, and it still does a little bit. Um, but now solar panels are built all in China, and I don't see much innovation. Maybe there's some uh, innovation coming out of Canada and the U.S. No, China is now the innovator. So they're not only producing, like, not just producing things that, a Westerner, uh, with Western technology, that, or a Western idea or whatever, but China's actually innovating, because I follow the solar panel and the silver uh, requirements for solar panels pretty closely, and these solar panels are getting pretty darn high efficient. So thank you, China, thank you. Um, but the untold consequences, it could have been so great. It just could have been so great. We could have, instead of building, silly neighborhoods, you could have just put the streets running east to west, and had a passive solar house facing the street, and on the other side of the street, passive solar house facing the backyard south, and yeah, reduced your heating bill to almost nothing. And yeah, could have had little lower taxation, and somebody like me building greenhouses all over these communities. But no, no, can't do that. Can't do that. No, can't even do a greenhouse like mine without extensive permitting and taxes if you have anything less than agriculture zoning, which I guess they just increased to 160 acres. So, one of my things was, well, geez, Dean, you could probably do most of what you're doing on just like 5 acres or something. I'm like, does it have agriculture zoning? No. Well, do you have any other stupid questions? Yeah, it could have been great, but it's not. So what do you do about it? And I hate. I'm sorry if I'm. And I try to stop doing this, but I try not to think of the past or do any blaming. But even though it probably sounds like I am, because I'm just discussing why I think Canada's going to go first and things. But you have to look forward. Okay, we're in this stupid thing. What do we do about it? Right? Right? The past is the past. You know, mistakes were made. Whatever. Now, what do you do about it today? Right? So, so my solution is to find your spot, pick your spot. It's everywhere has its problems, and hunker inward, and work on self sufficiency, and look after yourself, and that's the best you can do. Yep. So thanks for listening, and yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you.